A stunning end to the Assad family's more than half a century rule in Syria. Rebel forces taking the capital of Damascus as its leader had to flee the country for safety. Now, for more on this, we're joined by Wendy Pearlman, political science professor at Northwestern University. Wendy, thanks so much for speaking with us today.
Of course, thank you for having me.
All right, so this was a lightning incursion by rebel forces who, after a 13-year civil war, managed in 13 days to topple the Assad family regime after decades in power. Talk to us about the significance of this.
It's a watershed moment in the history of Syria and really the entire Middle East, and especially the history of Middle East authoritarianism. Hafez al-Assad seized power in 1970 and created a brutal, cruel authoritarian regime that ruled Syrians through fear, silence, and corruption for decades. Syrians poured into the streets in 2011 on the backdrop of the Arab Spring to call for freedom and dignity. They met with ferocious government repression that eventually had this uprising evolve into a war that has gone on for years and years. Many throughout the world lost hope that Syrians would ever succeed in overthrowing this dictatorship, and Syrians proved the world wrong. Despite over 500,000 dead, some 14, 15 million displaced, total destruction of so much infrastructure, entire cities flattened. Syrians never gave up the dream of a free homeland, of living with dignity in their country, of reclaiming Syria from the Assad family rule. And they showed the world that they could do it. And that's what they did this weekend.
All right, and Wendy, we're seeing here on the video, there's people celebrating, many of them refugees who have had to flee Syria, who are now living in other countries, celebrating the end of Assad's rule. But many say they're wary. So I want to ask you, what could the future of Syrian leadership actually look like? Tell us more about these rebel groups. Who are they? What do they stand for? And could they actually be better for the Syrian people?
I am one of many who believe that nothing can be worse for the Syrian people than the continuation of the Assad regime. Syrians' lives could only move forward. Their future only has a chance with the end of this regime. So I'm one of many who's optimistic. But yes, there are reasons for hesitation. This is a major transition of a regime. And as we've seen in countries around the world, across time and space, transitions to democracy can be difficult. It is difficult for a political system that ruled for over 50 years to transform into a new system. But I have faith in the Syrian people and in their capacity to demand what they want, which is freedom, representation, accountability, inclusion. So there are various rebel groups that came together in a coalition to launch this offensive. And as they conquered town after town, many local uprisings and groups came in different parts of Syria to also try to liberate themselves from the regime. In addition to that, there are Kurdish-led forces in the northeast. So there are a lot of different groups and a lot of different interests. What we hope now is that they will come together and work together to create a transitional political body that can transition to a new system, but it won't be just rebel groups who are leading and ruling, that they will also have space for Syrian civil society. There is so much talent and so much expertise in Syrian society, both within the country and among refugees and the diaspora outside it, to pull upon their skill and their knowledge to create a new system where Syrians can choose their own leaders, where they can create democratic laws and enforce them, where people can participate and control their own fate and destiny at last.
All right, Wendy, according to Russian state media, Bashar al-Assad has fled to Russia, where he's been granted asylum. What does the fall of the Assad regime mean for Syria's allies, including Russia and Iran?
Well, I think that the obligation for Russia and Iran now is to recognize the reality that the Assad regime is no longer. There are facts on the ground, and that is a new Syria. And I think that any country that wants to have good relations with this new state of Syria will have to open up channels of communication and cooperation with the new transitional authorities and build an entirely new set of relations under new foundations, because the idea of the Assad regime is over. There is no more thought of Assad's allies. Assad has become irrelevant. That regime is finished. There's only one Syria now, a free Syria that Syrians will determine for themselves, and every country of the world, regardless of where they were beforehand, now the path ahead is to make new relations and help this new Syria that is being birthed right now be a country of stability, of peace, of prosperity, and of freedom for its people.
All right, so what are we seeing then from the international community? How are other countries responding to this?
Well, I think it's still very new, but so we have more questions and more challenges, I think, than answers. But as I said, the key is to help Syria aid with its transition. Syria is a country in which many countries have intervened over the past years to preserve their own interests. Now is the time to put finally the interests of the Syrian people first. Syria might need economic aid. It might benefit from expertise, but most of all, it will benefit from good relations of countries that realize their role is not to intervene, is not to interfere, is not to take advantage, but to support this new democratic dream.
All right, Wendy, as always, thank you so much for your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
That is political science professor Wendy Pearlman with Northwestern University.